Welcome to Seeing This. I'm Mike Ornelas, and I have the pleasure of being joined by writer, producer, director Vanessa Esteves, whose animated short, Christopher and the Bug, takes a look at a curmudgeon owl who is set in his routine and isolation until an unexpected visitor arrives and changes everything. Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Congratulations on the film. Truly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Um, you know, I must say, Christopher the Owl,
Mhm.
incredibly relatable. What I'd
That's
love to
good.
learn. I'd love to learn where the inspiration from the story came from. How did it all start?
Okay, so the story has been with me for a little while. It started when I first came out of film school. I had a not so great experience with a roommate, and I was trying to come up with an idea for my next script. And it just kind of sparked for me one day. Wouldn't it be funny if there was this, person? It was a live action, um, like human centered script at the time. So Christopher was a man, and I thought it would be funny to see this, this character just go to all these great lengths to get rid of this unwanted roommate. And then I made the roommate a bug just to give it a little bit of a quirky angle. And it was a dark comedy, but the script stayed with me for so long that every time I'd go back to it, I would be at a new point in my life and my
Mm,
perspective on the story would have changed. So it went from being a story where I was Christopher, and I had something to learn, to kind of becoming a bigger story where the bug was no longer just representing a roommate. I kind of saw it as a way to have that bug represent whatever you want it to represent, right? Whatever it is in your life that might be irking you, or that you might want to just push out because you just don't like it, right? We all have those things. And then it just became a story for all ages about, like, what if you didn't, put so much energy into being negative, and what if you just let it in and let it wash over you? Could it change you for the better? And of course it does for Christopher. So that's sort of where that came from.
I love that. And you've worked on various children's television series as a producer, including Super
Yeah.
Wish and
Hmm.
multiple Thomas and Friend projects. What has that transition been like going from producer to director on this project? And as you said, this script has been something on your mind for some time. Have you always envisioned it as being your, directorial debut?
I kind of did, to be honest. I was very lucky that my career took this incredible road. As soon as I found my way into animation as a way to storytell, um, it kind of opened up so many different opportunities for me. So I started right at the bottom. I was a design coordinator, and then loved it, and just kind of worked my way up through different shows. And then it got to Super Wish, where I was the supervising producer, but I was also the co-creator and co-showrunner on that one, and that gave me my first peek behind the curtain of, kind of what that creative leadership would look like. And I was working very closely with my partner, who is the director, and that's when I started to think, okay, Christopher is going to be a project that I am not going to just hand over. I've got a vision for this one. I know what I want it to look like. I can do this. So that kind of did become the project that I would have my directing debut on.
You and Kevin McAuliffe worked as co-directors on this project, and I'm
That's
always
right.
curious on the dynamics of co-directors. What is the collaboration like? And I'd love to know, what your thoughts were working on this style of animation in particular.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, I've had creative relationships before where I was sharing the creative journey with another person. So I did have some experience with the idea of, really needing to collaborate. Christopher had been on such a long journey with me that by the time Kevin joined the mix, I kind of already knew exactly what I wanted this one to be. So, for better or for worse, Kevin had joined at a point where I really needed him to share my vision. I needed whoever was coming in to kind of share that vision, because I wasn't willing to pivot and start all over again. But I was lucky because Kevin saw in the film exactly what I had seen, and he came from a Disney background, and The film was originally it was going to be CG for like a hot minute,
Mm.
and I had built Christopher with another artist, Darren Kirkness. We made him into a CG rig, and it didn't quite feel right for the project. And also, if we're being honest, it's a tougher go as an independent to create a short film in CG. So we pivoted, and Kevin came on board, and we kind of fleshed out this beautiful classic vibe that reminded us of the films that we watched when we were growing up. And then we brought in our art director, Don Goche, and that sealed it because Don's style is very painterly and just very stunning. So that helped shape what that final look would look like. And then every step of the way from that point on, Kevin and I were just in lockstep. We would, sit in the edit room together and look at the animation together. So it was helpful to have someone who kind of had that shared vision.
I really did appreciate this animation style. It felt, kind of you as you alluded to, a throwback to the animated films I grew up with. Yet it
Yeah.
still seemed fresh. It felt new.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you landed specifically around like character design? Because you deal with a lot of different animals in the story, and I'm curious what it was like in that collaboration process, just getting the right look.
So we actually started with like a live action owl, obviously, as one does, and narrowed in on the Western screech owl. That's where Christopher gets his start from. And then as we moved from CG into 2D animation, that's really when Kevin had stepped in and he really helped shape the look of Christopher and his personal style, I would say, is a little classic Disney vibing. So as soon as we saw the version that Kevin had, done up based on the original iteration, that's when it sort of clicked and that informed the rest of the characters. I mean, there aren't very many characters in the film, which was by design to make it manageable for a small team. But obviously, there's the neighbor and there's the other creatures that we see in the Christmas tree lot. So we wanted them all to feel obviously like they were from the same world. We wanted to keep it in that woodland vibe. I mean,
Hmm.
the neighbor across the street is very Canadian feeling for us. So that was our little nod to Canada. Um, but yeah, we just kind of we got Christopher locked down first, and then we just wanted to build around it so it felt like a storybook.
I love the shout out to the beaver. He was definitely a fun character. Um,
Yeah.
what was your thought process like behind telling the story solely through like a narrator, as opposed to dialogue between characters? Especially since you said the script kind of originated in a live action. Can you kind of talk about the evolution of that decision?
Yes. So, even when it was live action, the script was narrator only.
Oh, okay.
I can't really I don't know if I could tell you why, it just was, an idea
Mm,
pops up and it just was. It was, shaped to be like a bedtime story for adults, and we were meant to be carried through the story with this lovely narrator, um, bringing through Christopher's emotions, and that kind of held on even when Christopher turned into an owl. We just really wanted to hang on to that so that it gave it that kind of like someone's reading you a story and therefore you're invited into it.
I honestly felt like that was a incredibly wise decision, even if it was just kind of instinctual, because it did kind of heighten there's a holiday undertone,
Yes,
and
there
the,
is.
the season that it takes place in, and I really appreciated that decision. It really helped with that. Without giving too much away, we don't necessarily know what kind of bug Christopher the Owl encounters. When you were writing the script as a bug being a character, did you have a particular bug in mind? Is that something you can reveal, or is the mystery part of the charm?
It's so funny. Someone asked me this just the other day, and I haven't ever put too much thought into it. But I guess if I were to, in my brain, call up what the bug might look like, it's kind of like a ladybug, but not red and black, just like but tiny and like, unimposing. It's not one of those really long, freaky ones that might scurry through your bathtub.
Sure.
Um, but the reason I don't have a design locked down in my brain is that I don't really know if it is a bug. Like the point
Hmm.
of the bug, even from day one, was meant to be whatever you want it to be, right? Like if I showed the bug on screen, because people did say in the development process, oh, show that bug, it's going to be so cute in animation. but I didn't want to. And I really dug in my heels because if I don't show you the bug, it can just remain a metaphor. It can be whatever you want it to be. And if it's a bug to you, that's great. I hope that you enjoyed the story. And if it's not a bug and it's like that friend on the schoolyard that you just don't like and you just, don't like them, then maybe that person is what you see in the bug. And therefore you'll leave the theater going, oh, maybe I should be friends with them, or maybe I shouldn't
Right.
spend so much energy not being friends with them. So we really wanted that bug to be a metaphor. And maybe it's a person for you, and maybe it's, a thing that you're pushing against. But by showing it, I think it would have taken away that ability a little bit, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. As you say that, it's great that, in the title, Christopher and the Bug, the bug could be a noun or it can be, an adjective, a verb, it can really
Something
translate.
that bugs you. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, absolutely. In today's day and age, even sociable people can feel quite isolated with everything
Mhm.
kind of being at your fingertips and whatnot. Can you speak to the importance of community and connection, which seems to be the main theme in this film, and why that's something you felt was important to highlight here?
Yeah. So it was interesting because the story was written before COVID. And then the film was produced after COVID. And so I think that a lot of myself and Kevin and a lot of the people that were on the crew had this like frame of reference now, sort of, for what Christopher
Oh,
was going through, which was neat. I know none of us really, we didn't choose that. But I also think that community was even more important coming out of COVID. So if I push away the adult audience for a minute and I just look at like the children's storytelling side of Christopher and the Bug, because I do hope that it's something that is enjoyed by all ages in the audience. But for the kids, I really wanted to shine a light on how it is better to have friends than it is to just, play on your own, so to speak. That the importance of community and what that community might do for you, even if they're only with you for a short period of time and then they move on, just how you might learn something about yourself, how you might learn something about someone else, and just really stressing how important that is, whether you're Christopher or whether you're feeling like the bug in a situation. At the end of the day, if we just push away all the fighting and just kind of make the most out of friendship when it's available to us, that we could find ourselves in a much better place.
and I love that you say that because, the various characters that we encounter, it's easy to think of Christopher as I opened saying that's the relatable one. But I mean, there's some people that might relate to the beaver as someone that's trying to be
So true.
hospitable, and just
Yeah.
sees this person. So I love that. What is it about children's stories or the children audience that really speaks to you? As I mentioned, a lot of your projects in this animated space are geared more towards children. Granted,
Mhm.
adults can enjoy them, but is there something particular that calls to you in children's storytelling?
I think, I mean, it's the imagination at first and foremost. I feel like I am a giant kid. I think people who know me in my life would say that I never truly grew up. But I remember the stories that I grew up on so fondly, and they were so formative. I really think that as creators of children's content, we have a huge responsibility to make sure that they are having access to the same type of imagination building worlds that we did as a kid. Because I had the never ending story shaped a
I love
huge
it.
part of who I am, for better or for worse. Um, but I think that it's really important, and especially today when I have two kids, I see them. They're not necessarily watching content the way I did. They're on lots of short form and different types of content. So it's important to me to make sure that regardless of what type of content they're watching or where they're watching it, that there are stories being told for them and worlds being built for them. And we don't just, completely give up on storytelling, because that's what makes us who we are, is the stories that we tell.
I truly appreciate that perspective. I often find myself feeling like the old man shaking my fist at the clouds, like,
I
what is
know.
the what is this slop, today kids are watching or whatever the case is. But it is an evolving um art form as far as what
Yeah.
children are taking in. Is that something that's conscious in your mind as far as trying to balance that shift and change, or are you still, or are you attempting to, like you said, take the foundational stories that you have ingrained in you and kind of propel that forward?
I'm definitely not trying to do that on the daily. Like, it's
Okay.
interesting because this project obviously is very nostalgic and this is more classic storytelling. And this is something that I would have watched growing up. And this is like a fun short film that I had the ability to do that. Kevin had the ability to do that. The team, we could make it what we wanted it to be. But in the rest of my career, when it comes to creating content for kids, I don't feel that way at all. I feel like the old person shaking
Yeah.
their fist when I try to put the storytelling that I grew up on into something that's for kids of today because that's not their brand of storytelling, right? And I think back to the stuff I watched when I was a kid, and my parents might have said, "Ooh, that's awful. Why are you watching that garbage?" But it was mine. And I think that today's kids have their own style of content they watch, and they're influenced by how they watch it, right? The internet and all of the different social media platforms. But what I do think is really important is that we keep telling quality stories
Mhm.
for those mediums. Like they're going to watch that content because it's theirs, but how do we help tell better stories on those mediums while not trying to just force them into something that doesn't feel like a good fit for their generation?
Absolutely. Firsthand I've experienced that. I don't have any children, but I have friends that do. And I tried to show some kids the Jungle Book, the original
Right.
animated Jungle Book. And it's so interesting to kind of see like where the attention sticks and where it
Yeah.
doesn't. And
It's true.
by the end, the review was like, "There's too many songs." I'm like, "What do you mean? These are great songs, you know?"
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's great that you have that in mind when making these new projects. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, with animation being so special to you. You did mention the Neverending Story, but what animated films really resonated with you as a kid and kind of has inspired your current career?
Oh, so many. I was a big fan of Thumbelina when I was growing up. That was a big one. All the Disneys. I, like I was saying yesterday, it made me feel so old, but I'm old enough to have watched everything on VHS when I was a
Right.
kid. And you only had so many, which my kids can't wrap their head around. Like, what do you mean you only had so many? So we might have had like 20 VHS, which was a ton, and we would just cycle through them and you watched your favorite movies over and over and over again. So we would watch, Peter Pan and Sleeping Beauty was huge, and Cinderella, all the Disney classics. And that really shaped my early imagination.
Absolutely. It's a great point there. In our time, VHS was huge. And if you owned a movie, you watched it multiple times. Like it
Yeah,
just got ingrained in your brain. And I think that's why
so true.
they hit so hard for us now. You've been wonderful with your time, Vanessa. I just have one last question that I'd like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast. What's an underseen film, can be animated or elsewise, that you would like to put on people's radar that maybe should get some more praise?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, I'm going to give an answer that is completely unrelated to Christopher and the Bug,
Okay, I love it.
but it is one of my favorites that whenever someone's like, "What's something I might not have seen?" I'm going to say Delicatessen, which
Oh
is a
yeah,
foreign film that was. Have you seen it?
it's on my wish. It's on my watch list.
Okay.
It's at the top of my watch list. Yeah.
It's very dark, so definitely not for kids, but that was a film that I can't even tell you how many times I watched it when I was in film school, but it was just one that we would watch over and over and over, and it was amazingly acted. The art direction, that post-apocalyptic vibe,
Mhm.
the story was quirky and, that kinda like that Amelie vibe, although
Right.
everyone has seen Amelie, I would hope. So I would say Delicatessen. If you haven't seen it, treat yourself to it, but definitely not for kids.
Absolutely. Watch that in an adult setting for sure.
That's right.
For
Yeah.
sure. Vanessa, thank you so much for your time. How can people keep up with where to find Christopher and the Bug, follow your career, anything else you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so you can follow us on socials. We are at Christopher and the Bug. That's an easy one to remember, or at Van Esteves _animation. And we're just kind of updating the journey of Christopher through those posts. And you can also find our website, Christopherandthebug.com.
Vanessa Esteves, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you and best of luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a great weekend.